everyone. We are back with another episode of our video series, Coming Home, Life After Semester at Sea, where we talk with our fellow Voyagers from Voyage 134 about what life after SAS has been like for them. I'm Kathleen Niegocki. I was one of the counselors on Voyage 134. With me is also my wonderful colleague, Emma DeCaro, who was one of our two ASL interpreters on Voyage 134. And today our guest needs no introduction, but is going to get an introduction anyway. Christy Anthony, one of our wonderful Voyage leadership team members. Thank you, Christy, for coming and doing this.
Thank you. It's so exciting to see and hear y'all.
Yeah. So you were on Voyage 134, and that also wasn't your first voyage either. So could you start by just telling us a bit about who you are, what your role was on our voyage, and anything you might want to say about like how you got involved with Semester at Sea to begin with?
Yeah. So Christy Anthony, I use she, her pronouns. I have been on 2 semester at sea voyages, both times serving as the assistant dean for student life, which unlike a lot of the faculty on the ship, I essentially had the same job as I have on my land campus, which is I was in charge of responding to student misconduct and some of the conflict management that was part of the voyage. And my previous voyage was a summer 2013 voyage. Sadly, Semester at Sea doesn't do summer voyages at this time, but that was my prior experience. And I've been doing similar work in DC and the Boston areas for about 20 years. And my first voyage, I sailed with my spouse. This time I sailed with my spouse and kiddo.
Thank you. I'm sure you've probably had like been in the position to describe Semester at Sea, to people who don't really know what it is. But, for anyone who's watching, who's not familiar, how would you describe Semester at Sea?
I mean, I tell people it has been one of the most profound personal and professional experiences of my whole life. I say it's an adventure that is both everything you would think it would be if you put 400 to 600 college students on a ship with faculty and families and sail halfway around the world, stopping at 10 countries. It is a comparative educational experience across cultures. And I talk a lot about when I'm asked about like, what was your favorite port? I say, honestly, my favorite port is always the ship. I learn the most from the shipboard community. It is the space that becomes home to me during the voyage. And it is a community unlike any other.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that has become kind of a theme across a lot of these conversations is like the community that forms and also like the unique environment of the ship. Which kind of actually that leads into one of our questions, which is like, what do you miss the most about SAS? Would you say it's the ship? Is there something else that comes to mind, like when you think about what you miss the most? Now that we've been back, as of today, it's been more than 3 months since we've been back.
Yeah. I mean, we
Yeah,
have to be coming up on, and maybe we've passed being back as long as we were gone.
we have because I've kept track.
Okay. I haven't done that math, but
Yeah,
it has to be close, right?
yeah.
I mean, I do miss the exciting moment of, oh my gosh, I am going to set foot in a place in the world where I have never been before, which for me was most of the fall 2024 voyage.
Yeah.
Um, and where I might never be again, where it's very possible. I don't know when I will go back to Mauritius unless it's on a future SAS voyage, right? And also, the thing I do miss most is the ship. I was thinking about like, oh, what do I miss the most? And I think it is the feeling of instant connection
Mm.
with people aboard ship who are relative strangers. I don't think I knew anyone aboard ship before I joined the voyage, besides my own family.
Yeah.
And yet it is this easy sense of connection and shared worldview. There's a lot of diversity aboard the ship, but everyone has chosen to be in that very particular space. And
Yeah.
I miss that feeling of, even if I don't know you, we are connected to each other in that way. So I think those are the things I'm missing the most.
Yeah, I resonate with so much of that, both like just the idea that like literally stepping foot on the ground of these different countries that you've never been to before and like recognizing how precious that opportunity is and how much you want to like savor that while you're there because you don't know, it's you don't know when you'll have that chance again. And so it just feels, yeah, the word precious comes to mind. Um, and yeah, something about just the ease of connecting and like how quickly that happens in this community that's not something you feel like that in other settings, you know?
I was
Yeah.
thinking about how much I miss, like, even up until the very end of the voyage, I felt like there were new people I was connecting with on the
Yeah.
voyage, literally up until I think like the final leg. And then I'm thinking about all the people who I would have connected with more deeply or in new ways that I didn't get a chance to. And
Yeah.
maybe we will. It's been really
Yeah.
fun to see people continue conversations or have group photos. And I'm like, oh, you knew this person. And just to think about how those might continue to form is really special
Yeah.
and meaningful. And it's
Absolutely.
something I miss.
Yeah. Um, can I backtrack a little bit to, kind of earlier you said, that semester at sea has really been like one of the most profound experiences for you personally and professionally. Is there anything you want to add to that, that you might want folks to know just about like how you were shaped by SAS, what
Yeah.
it's
I
meant for
mean,
you yourself?
yeah, SAS was something I had tried to do for about 10 years before I finally got to sail for the first time. There were times I was interviewed and not selected, or times that I was interviewed and I had to drop out for personal reasons. So one thing I would say to people who aren't selected to sail is like, persist. It is worth it and it can happen. I think one of the things I've worked on a lot of different campuses. I'm currently at my 10th institution in my
Oh,
career.
wow.
Um, and it reminds me of how important the institutional context is for a learning experience. That while it is about, who is in the classroom and what is the subject being taught, that the larger context of the institution, whether it's a small liberal arts college in a big city or a research institution or an Ivy League campus, or whether it's a shipboard community, how much that context influences the work. And that
Yeah.
helps me to think about it in terms of how that impacts the land campus I work on now. I also think one of the consequences of my work, right, is that I tend to see students when they are at a moment of crisis and conflict, and most humans do not always show up at their best in those moments. For some people, it's a moment where their best self shines, but for lots of us, that's not our greatest.
Yeah.
And it is a really good reminder to me of how important it is, if I know that that is one of the perspectives that comes into my work, how important it is to see the whole student. And SAS gave me a chance to do that, right? There were students with whom I had conduct cases who I also shared an overnight field program with and had some really
Yeah.
powerful conversations about decision making and how we move through the world. And it's just I used to work at a Jesuit school. It's just a really powerful moment to see everyone, but especially students as whole people.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's really beautiful. Um, Coming back to like where we are now, looking back, and this is a hard question, I think, because it's asking you to pick one. So you don't have to pick one, but can you tell us one of your favorite memories? And if that's impossible, more than one is okay.
Ooh. So I think there are a couple for me. One I'll pick though is I was on a overnight field program in Vietnam. Um, this is such an illustration of what an academic nerd I am. I was on an overnight field program in Vietnam, and I was talking to two students, and they were sharing how they had done one of their global studies projects, I think the comparative project on the I'm blanking on the name, but like the water lilies that we were seeing in rivers all over Southeast Asia.
Okay.
And they shared with me, those aren't indigenous plants. And I was like, what? They're everywhere. And they said, no, they're an invasive species. And they talked about how they had researched the migration of these plants from South America to Southeast Asia, and how both they had been invasive and how they were um, how local communities were adapting to their presence and using them in new and interesting ways. And it was just this amazing moment for me where, I was just floating down the Mekong River, having a chill afternoon, and these students were taking something they had learned in global studies, so shout out to global studies, and applying it to their experiences in the communities we were visiting and teaching other voyagers, me, about it. And suddenly I was looking at this plant that I'd been seeing for several weeks and not really understood. I was seeing it in a whole new global and environmental and human to wildlife species context that I didn't know. And they were so proud of their work and their understanding, but I just could have listened to them for so much longer on that topic. So that's just like a really happy memory for me. And they weren't students I had known prior to that field program. I had seen them around, but I hadn't connected with them in the way I now feel connected to them.
Yeah, that's such a cool memory because it feels like it captures so much of what Semester at Sea is about, like this kind of like contextual global learning in action, like viscerally, and seeing those wheels turning for people. And then also like that everyone can be learning from everyone, like, yes, you were in this position or whatever, you were faculty, but like we learned so much from the students, and just how we're in this like co-created learning, experiential learning experience. So I love that so much. So along with like being back, looking back, one of the reasons why we're doing these videos is to talk about like potential things that might have been hard about coming back and returning, and there's so many different ways that's gone for people, but was there anything for you that was tricky, or, what was it like adjusting back after?
Yeah, I think there were a couple things for me that were really hard. Like I said, I love being aboard the ship, and there is just no way to mimic that environment elsewhere. I tried for 10 years, 11 years between voyages, and was
it
like,
didn't
nope,
happen.
it's not the same. And even when you see the same people, right, the connection comes back very quickly. But again, the context really matters. So to help me manage that, honestly, what I've been doing is really focusing on the things that I didn't have aboard ship that I do love about being home, right? So I love being able to bike trails near my house. I love being able to hang out with my dog. I love being able to go to my farmer's market where like the vendors know me, and I love being able to cook. So those things and gardening have been like, okay, these are things I couldn't do aboard ship that I can do here. No place has everything. I think the other thing that has been deeply challenging for me professionally and personally, without going into a ton of detail, but my work, a lot of us talked aboard ship about as the political landscape around the world and in the US changed, in some ways, the ship was like this bubble, right? Where we could almost pretend that wasn't happening if we wanted to. And certainly we could ignore anything we wanted to ignore, or more easily. Acknowledging there's some passport and other identity privilege that comes with that ability. My work on the land campus I'm on is now very politicized. And that's happening across higher ed. It's happening in lots of different areas, but my work in student conduct has certainly been politicized in that way on a national scene. And there's lots of times I miss being like, nope, I'm in this little bubble.
Yeah.
Um, and again, to cope with that, I've really looked to what are the resources I have on my land campus that I didn't have aboard semester at sea, right? I can talk to colleagues, I can read the news more easily and process more context again.
Yeah.
But I think that's been hard for higher ed professionals everywhere.
Definitely. And I think especially coming out of an experience where really there was like a buffer, literally like a physical buffer, a
Yes. An
technology buffer,
internet buffer. Yeah.
that we came back and had to like face reality in a lot of ways. And I think what you shared about like just there's no way to recreate that shipboard environment rings true across a lot of these conversations. And, thank you so much for sharing like some of the things that have helped, because I think that might be helpful for a lot of people, like transitioning back and just like instead of just like sinking into just the loss, and what we don't have and what's gone, like having experiencing that and also making room for like what are the things that I now have again that I love and that nourish me, things, people, animals, activities, that like I did miss while I was gone, and like letting those things be grounding for you.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to share while we're here? That was like the last question.
I think, the thing that really sticks with me, and I heard another person say this, so this may be repetitive for the series, is it is really hard when the voyage ends. And also, I don't think, for me, my experience with semester at sea hasn't ended. I hope to sail again. And B, it constantly comes up and I get to revisit it and reflect on it and turn it over in new ways over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I hope that there's no way to sail on a semester at sea voyage and not be changed by it.
Yeah.
And so I think it continues to change you over time. So where it
Yeah.
feels like, oh, that's over, I don't think it's over. It's just different in your life.
Yes. That's such a beautiful, I'm so glad that you shared that. Like, and I feel like that's such a beautiful place to end with just that like, there's a way in which it's over, but it's not like it changes us. It lives on in us. Like it's with us still, like even though we're not there. So thank you so much, Christy, for doing this with us. It was really awesome to talk to you and hear from you. Yeah. And thanks to everybody for watching.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye.
Bye.